Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you. This is our first formal panel of the day for Springboard. That was a great way to start, hearing from Bob and Sid. Let's give them another round of applause as they're sitting right here. Fantastic wisdom, guys. Thank you. Well, good morning. My name is Josh Wall, and I serve as the Chief Growth Officer for Unleash Brands. Unleash Brands is a kids enrichment brand platform of 7 different companies where we get a chance to partner with moms and dads around the country to help them build great kids. We have about 1,400 operating units, and of the 7 brands, 2 of our brands are currently emerging, and I've been a part of helping to grow emerging brands for over 21 years in franchising. So I'm pleased to be with you this morning moderating this great panel on franchise development. So this will be all-encompassing, top to bottom, everything you will ever need to know about franchise development in the next 35 minutes. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists here, or let me have them introduce themselves. JT, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Sure, thanks. My name is JT. I'm with Rolling Suds. I've been doing franchise development for 32 years, believe it or not. I fell into it by accident on my way to law school and fell in love with it. And so I've probably put something like 5,000 people in franchises over that time with a lot of different brands. So excited to be here today. Currently, I'm with Rolling Suds.
Great. Thanks, JT. Hello? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Marcy Kleinsasser. I am currently with Home Franchise Concepts. We are a home services franchise platform with over 10 brands. Like JT, I have been around franchising for over 30 years, leading marketing for most brands, and I'm currently leading franchise development marketing for Home Franchise Concepts. Like JT, I kind of fell into franchising early on. My dad was a franchisee for the Medicine Shop franchise, worked for his franchise as a teenager, and then I grew up on the agency side, moved to franchisor side, and haven't looked back. So excited to talk about franchise development from the marketer's eye today. Thank you.
Great.
And my name is Eric Lavender, and I work for New Spring Franchise. It is owned by New Spring Capital. We own several food and beverage restaurant concepts across the country, and I'm really excited to kind of help build all these emerging brands and help to share some insight as we continue to grow our brands. I got into franchising actually different. I actually bought a franchise when I was 22, knowing nothing, and wish I had had stuff like this to learn from. So 9 years later, I decided to get on the other side and go to the franchisor, and kind of haven't looked back. Been really enjoying it and love giving back, so thank you.
Well, great. So we've got a fantastic panel for you. And the way we constructed this session, if this is your first time at Springboard, everyone at Springboard really prefers a conversation. So I'm going to ask our panelists some questions to help them pull out all of that experience and wisdom for you. But if you have a question while we're having this conversation, don't hesitate, shout it out, raise your hand. We want to capture it for the room, but don't hold back. So the way we started thinking about this is emerging brands are defined typically as fewer than 100 units or not royalty self-sufficient yet. So how do you move from that place of launching your FDD, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 units, not yet royalty self-sufficient, to growing your business? The whole panel thought we started with, who are you looking for? And so the ideal candidate profile for your new franchisees, these are going to be the franchisees you're targeting to acquire and grow with. So panel, let's hear from all of you. How do you think about the ideal candidate profile? How is it designed in your experience for an emerging brand? And then how does that evolve over time as you have 20, 30, 40 units, maybe even 100 units? How does that evolve? JT, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think it's really important. It was interesting. I was having this conversation in an Uber yesterday with a franchisee that I'm mentoring who's trying to get her first franchisee, and she was calling me because she thinks she has it, and she was asking, like, so much is good, but there's some things that aren't so great about this person, and I'm like, for franchisee number one, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no, right? And as you are looking to build your brand, You've got to think about those first few franchisees as being super important because they're going to lead your validation. They're going to be the ones to help mold your business moving forward. And so you really have to have that avatar. You have to understand exactly what you're looking for. And if it's not a hell yes, it's got to be a no. As excited as you are to get like dots on the map, because we're all dying to get those dots on the map, if you get the wrong people early on, they can absolutely kill your business. So I think you really have to know exactly what you're looking for. Is it you? If you're the franchisor or the person that built this business, are you trying to replicate yourself or are you looking at yourself in a mirror saying, maybe I need somebody with different skill sets than me, and you have to really be clear on what that is that you're looking for.
That's good.
Yeah, I'll just say over time, so certainly when you have to put the first business owner in place, right? But over time, I think I've seen so many franchisees fail, unfortunately, that it's so important that you come up with a list of what you're not looking for so that you can better tailor the avatar to what it should look like. So then you can work with your teams, both on the sales side and the marketing side, to really hone in on that target audience. So keep in mind that while you have to come up with what I want in my business owner for my brand, you need to know exactly what you don't want, and that really will help you get to the yes, this is what I'm looking for.
All great points. I would just add that I think it's important that you realize the person has to be very good at what they do and understand that there's going to be road bumps, right? There's going to be hiccups. This is the first or second or third franchisee. You probably don't have your franchise system figured out yet. I mean, you're going to have to kind of learn as you go and kind of figure it out along the way. And to have a good partner who can be patient with you, right? Giving a little bit, taking a little bit, and working through the processes, and you'll realize your brand will probably evolve by amazing franchise owner feedback. And if you listen to them and you help navigate them as well as they're helping to navigate you to build the business, because the way you operate it might not be the way it can be scaled in the future. And so working with your franchisees, your first couple, they have to be passionate, they have to be excited, and they have to be patient. And I think for us to be able to do that, we have to then be patient with them as well and realize that sometimes it's just not always going to be sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, and I'll just camp on that, and then if you want to go on to the next question, Josh. But just the questions that you ask your first 10 are going to be very different than the questions you ask the next 10 and the next 50, because of the fact that those that come in early, you want to know that they're going to be very nimble and that they're going to be flexible, and the feedback that you need from them is so critical early on.
That's good. So camping out here for a minute, let's talk about specific characteristics. So for someone who's looking for the first few franchisees, what do they have to have? You all talked about soft skills. So what are a few of the hard skills that they should be looking for in the right franchisees?
Well, we all know that obviously they need to have some type of financial wherewithal, right, to actually purchase your franchise. But again, depending on the vertical that you're in, sometimes I've heard over the years, they have to have a passion for my business. Well, in some cases that's the case, but what is their why? Why are they even looking to buy your business in the first place? And you really need to peel back the onion on that to make sure that they have kind of we talk about it a lot. They have to have grit to get up in the morning and run a business, right? If they're moving from the corporate world into being a business owner for the first time, do they understand what it takes to actually run a business?
That's all good points. I also think you have to understand what their previous life was, right? Have they owned a business in general? Have they owned a franchise in general? What is their background and how is that going to help them to understand how to operate a franchise? They don't just have to be a franchisee of another brand at the time. I think owning a business, owning a franchise, of just being in the business world and having some business knowledge is going to help make the conversion to understanding how to run this business a little bit simpler.
That's great. We have a question right here. Yes, ma'am.
I'll answer that. The question is, are you expecting your first franchisees to be owner-operators? And I think a little bit of it depends on your brand, but if it's me, absolutely. I don't want my first franchisees to be a passive investor that's going to go hire a GM to run my business. Like, I want you in there figuring it out, not only for your sake, but also for my sake, because I need feedback from you as opposed to what's working, what's not. Where are the donuts going, as Bob talked about this morning. So I think having someone that's at least, whether they're in the store or in the business every day, but just highly involved as opposed to semi-absentee or passive, I think that's absolutely essential for probably your first 10 or 20, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. For the most part, your first group of franchisees, you define the number 5, 10, 20, they're your closest advisors and your number one validators for the next 20 or 40 or 100 that come in, right? They're your early adopters. So as JT said, they need to be in the trenches with you. Yes, they're running your business, and that's the most important part of their day, but then you're going to want that ongoing feedback from them. So if they're passive owners, that's probably not what you're looking for, regardless of the vertical, whether it's a restaurant or it's home services, or regardless. So I think that's really important. If it were up to me and I'm the franchisor, I don't think that would be a good option for me.
And I think the franchisees will love that. If they really love the brand and they love what they're doing, they're going to really want to give the feedback. It's going to make them feel validated, heard, understood, listened to. And in return, as the franchisor, there's lots of things that you can do for them to make them have better experiences, right? That other franchisees, as your 300th, will not get what your first 5 or 10 or 15 are. So take care of them, right? Don't be so difficult on the first couple because they're working through the challenges with you. You should be flexible with them and kind of give them not necessarily more or everything that you possibly can, but they definitely deserve the time and attention. They definitely deserve kind of some rewards and recognition for what they've been able to do to support your growth, because they're really, in essence, helping you grow your business.
That's good. Yes, sir. They are. Yeah, that's a great point. So your first few franchisees are going to help develop the item 19 that you will continue, your financial performance representation, that you will continue to grow with in the coming years. So critically important. I would tend to say, and we'll come to you in just a second, I would tend to say in my experience, you want to be asking behavioral questions. So you're interviewing these candidates, and like JT started off with saying, you want to make sure you're making right decisions and you're getting rock stars, you're getting superstars. They're going to be people who are going to be your brand in the communities that they serve, but you want to be asking questions that help you understand how they've performed in the past in certain situations. And I'm typically always trying to measure someone's coachability. That's the number one thing we're looking for in franchisees is their coachability. So our operations team can help drive and direct the training of the system. So that's good. Yes, sir, there was a... Yeah, great question. So question was, do you think it's a good idea to use incentives to help grow in your first few franchise units that you're awarding? So actually, let me ask the panelists here. So the way you think about incentives, have you used them? And when you're launching a brand, is that a good time to use them?
I would say yes. I think there are some things that you can use as incentives for early people to get in and feel like, hey, in return for all the work I'm going to be doing to help build this brand alongside you, I'm also benefiting because I'm getting more territory potentially, or a discount on a third territory or something along those lines. In my opinion, there are some things that should probably be untouchable, because these are 10-year agreements, and when people start validating with those folks and they find out that they're getting a 3% royalty, but yet they're looking at an 8% royalty in the new agreement, then you've got challenges, and you've got a system that's not consistent. And you have to sort of think about, try to close your eyes and go, what's this going to look like 10 years from now? And you're going to be like, I really wish I didn't do that for some of those folks. So I think things that are easy to justify and that won't carry through are the things that I would use as incentives, as opposed to lower fees, like on the ongoing fees, the royalties, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would just say ditto to that. Look at some things that you can kind of justify for your brand, that you can feel strong about. Certainly on the marketing side, you can offer something that's easy to implement, but as JT said, you won't regret 5-10 years down the road as your newer franchisees at that point come in. So I definitely think that that's valuable as you're launching your brand, to look at what you can incentivize with, but that it won't affect your kind of the sound, concrete plan for your business growth long term.
I agree with both of them. I think the legals should stay the same, and you can do things for them on an as-needed basis because you don't know what it's going to be. And so if something happens and you need to support them through a distribution nightmare or through a buyback, and you've already given them lower royalties, well, now you don't have the royalties to give them whatever it is that they want, right? So to my opinion, the FDD and the FA should stay the same as it's going to be, and you should give them other things that you can work through on an as-needed basis that's going to help them because you don't know where the problems are going to lie.
My advice would be don't screw with your royalty fee. That's going to dramatically impact the value of your business. And if you heard the second distinction of an emerging brand is either crossing that 100-unit threshold or royalty self-sufficiency. So don't, as much as you can, don't screw with your royalty fee. If you do, discount your one-time fees. But we've done some programs in the past where you might be adding to their startup marketing program as an incentive. That's something that could be an add back to your P&L, and it's something that's going to help them get the word out. So it also is a double benefit to you by getting the brand more customers in their local market. We had a question here, and I'll come back to you. Yes, ma'am. You're getting ahead of us here. This is good. So we've been talking about the who, and actually let's go ahead and jump to the where. We'll come back and talk about the how fast in just a minute, but I love that question. How do you think about what's the right way for an emerging brand to start from a location base? Thinking about geography from a location base, what's the best strategy for launching the business?
I think geography is important because you have to have the infrastructure available in that market or in that area to help support the franchisees, right? Just like you wouldn't want to put your first store in Philly and then go to North Dakota as your second store, I think the same applies for your first couple of franchisees. A couple of hours drive is not necessarily a big deal, and you do want to pick a market that is very good for franchising, right? It's going to help you and succeed and picking the right locations. And maybe you have to go a little bit further to find that right perfect spot because you need validation, you need a good item 19, you have to be patient and find the right location. But I think you also have to consider you're going to be supporting that franchisee, right? Until you hire somebody, that's on you. So you're running your business and you're then having to go visit with that franchisee wherever they may be, and that could take away from your time and availability. So I think keeping it regional or keeping it local is, in my opinion, is the best way to go to start off with.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to consider, but everything Eric said, the only thing I would add to that is you have the recruiting side, so the marketing of your opportunity, right? And if you regionalize to your headquarters, certainly you have the infrastructure to support, but you also have the marketing consideration. So as you build the brand out from the brand awareness, it's easier to do that when you have kind of the density of existing businesses, so you can start to build your brand. There's a couple of benefits to that as well. So as you're building your infrastructure and your brand visibility, then you can kind of future-proof that in terms of building co-ops and all of that, and that comes back to validation. So it's kind of cyclical for you to do that, to kind of build out kind of a spoken wheel, if you will, versus I've seen franchisors not be successful in a growth strategy where someone comes in from North Dakota or South Florida or Washington, and they're like, yes, 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 and they're awarding all these franchisees, and then they're kind of stuck with the support infrastructure, and then from a marketing perspective, they have total inefficiency to support that at the franchisee level and the franchisor level. So definitely, if you can, spoken wheel, regional, and build out from there.
And maybe JT, just on this as a derivative of the question, what should a franchisor's org look like as they're moving from a regional-based business to more of a national-based business? Their org chart, the support system, number of team members,
have no idea. No, I'm kidding. No, certainly, making sure that the franchisees are supported, overly supported, is really key, because what I've seen happen a lot, and what we tried to really guard against at our brand now, is you get this really fast growth, and it's all great and exciting, and people start popping up, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, somehow we have to train and support and help with locations and all these things for all these people, and we're still training the people to do that. And so don't outpace your support capabilities with your growth, I think, is really important. And as you look to go from regional to national, that means probably having people on different time zones and considering all of that stuff as well as you look to do this. So really, you have to be thoughtful about it, because again, it's great if you just go out of the gates and sell 50 franchises in your first year. If those people aren't feeling overly supported, then good luck getting the next 50, because they're going to validate negatively about your brand, and that will kill you right where you are. I think one other thing just to add too about the for emerging brands, you got to keep a close eye on the registration states. To be honest, I think they're getting more difficult than ever for emerging brands in a lot of cases, and you don't want to be putting a lot of your apples in places where you could be dark for 5 months every year because of the registration state. So I would keep that certainly in mind as well.
That's good. We had a question over here. Yes, ma'am. So the question was, can you make a specific advertising claim for your first 5 units or for the first 5 signings that you have? Okay, so your first 5 signings. Yes, I'm sure you can. You need to speak with your attorney about making sure you make a proper disclosure in your item 5, because that's where you'll put your discounts. So if it's a specific, talk to your attorney. None of us up here are practicing attorneys, but that's a great question. And if you want to build a promotion around that, you just need to make sure you have the right disclosure. And your attorney should be able to add that into item 5 very easily for you. That's good. We had a question over here. Yes, sir. Welcome. Yeah, great question. So the question was, he just had his FDD published for the first time, so congratulations, after 12 or 11 years in business, so that's fantastic. And so he's new to franchising. Should he organically recruit his first franchisee, or should he entrust it to a third-party franchise sales organization? So that's one of our next subjects, so great segue. So how do we think, team, about the idea of building in-house organically, or trusting a third party outside that's an FSO to represent you in the market? Eric?
I'll start off. I think if it's a small brand and you're just starting off, you got to figure out what your core competency is. Are you able to sell the brand? There's a lot of legal requirements to sell a brand, and you got to make sure that's something that you have a passion for, that you want to do. You need to figure out what you're good at and figure out where you're not good at, and hire somebody to kind of help offset the things that you need. It's also going to cost money, but you also want to make sure that you do it the right way the first time. So if it's worth the investment spend, you should do that. But I think you got to figure out from a leadership perspective and the owner of the brand, is that something you love to do, want to do, enjoy doing, and are good at? If it's not, then I would figure out an alternative to have someone else help work side by side with you. Maybe they coach you along the way, but I would figure out how you can best do that utilizing somebody else or doing it yourself, depending upon the financials and then your opportunity.
Great. JT, you want to?
Yeah,
add to
I think
that?
there's a lot of different ways you can go. I think that's a really strong point, is that you have to figure out where your skill set lies, right? And I've seen people that be like, I'm going to sell my first 5 myself, and they never do because they're really terrible at doing it. And so if you have enough, self-awareness to say, yeah, that's not me, then hire someone to do it, or look at going the FSO route. There's really great FSOs out there that can really build your business very quickly. It's going to take more money to do it that way, and you have to be prepared for a lot of growth, because FSOs want to grow quickly because they eat what they kill, right? And so you've got to make sure that you've got the infrastructure in place to really go down that path too if you want to. Personally, I like to sort of self-select the first few and really develop the kind of relationship where I can text them at 11 o'clock at night and be like, dude, it's me, can we talk, and have that kind of thing. And when they're being brought to you by someone that's not you, you don't always start off with that kind of level of relationship that I think you need for those first 5 or 10. But there's no really wrong answer unless you just don't want to do it, then find someone to do it for you.
And from my perspective, a lot of it comes down to the speed of growth you're trying to achieve. And so I think you can, if you've got a long-term build nice and organically strong and good foundation, and you're building for the future, there's no reason why you shouldn't just recruit the franchisee yourself. And to JT's point, Eric's point, really refine your process internally of how you're selecting the right candidates. And it also helps you fine-tune your pitch. What's compelling about your business opportunity? What is it? We heard on the stage this morning, franchising is a tool for building generational wealth. So as you're comprising that pitch, what does it look like? What does it sound like? And is it compelling to an interested person? I think if you have a really strong appetite for growth, and I would put that in anything, if you're going from FDD, if you're talking about trying to be in 25 signings to 50 signings in your first 12 to 24 months, it's not impossible, but I think that's a difficult challenge to do internally and organically unless you have such a compelling value proposition to a franchisee and your process is synced up and solid. So we want to be diplomatic because I know we have FSOs in the room and we have organic sales teams in the room, and both have validity, and both there are both pros and cons to both sides. But just for the educational purposes, an FSO is a franchise sales organization, and so it is a third party that franchisors would contract with to represent you to the open market, and they would be working in that channel as an extension of your team. And I don't want to sell for them, but they would say this is what they do every day, and allows you to do what you do every day. And there are pros and cons to that. I would say if you're considering that, you want to make sure you're being thoughtful and making sure you understand the terms of the agreement, because they are. It's an agreement unto itself. So you want to make sure that you have good representation going into that, and you're being thoughtful about what you're trying to achieve. The panel has already said, what do you want to achieve? And so we talked about who are you looking for, how quickly you want to grow as part of your strategy, where you want to grow geographically. These are all parts of how you're growing and developing your strategy. So anything else on, as we think about FSOs, we're going to move into some lead generation budgets and think about how we design those, but anything else to add on organic versus FSO, team? Great. So now we've got the who, we've got the how, the where. Now this is getting into this is the how, is if we're going to be doing this in-house organically, what does the lead generation need to look like? And what are some of our options from channels that'll help us generate interested candidates? So, team, if we could talk about what are some of the theories about how to design the right lead generation budget, cost per lead, cost per deal. What are some of our thoughts around that? And Marcy, why don't we start with you on this? This is your core area.
Yeah, so obviously as you're getting started, you want to look at, how can I generate leads for my business? And a lot of times, it's kind of a struggle as you're just starting out. Your budgets are small, but you want to obviously generate the quantity of leads versus quality. So looking at a cost per lead, you're going to get a lot of quantity, and then you want to look at your cost per deal, which is obviously going to focus more on quality. So you need to start building a brand. Maybe no one's heard of your business yet, so you also potentially can balance that out using many of the really great broker networks out there. And I've seen most successful businesses launch with a combination of both. Starting out in the broker networks, obviously that's going to get you some leads fast in the door, whether you're using an FSO or you're using an in-house team. So these are a lot of questions that you want to ask yourself. Where do I want to divert the dollars? Obviously, memberships in the broker networks and attending events with these great broker networks out there and working with broker consultants, but also generating brand awareness for your business with organic lead gen, whether you're on the franchise portals or you're running just ads on Google or paid social. So all of those options are out there for you, and you just have to kind of consider, where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? And starting out, it's not an easy answer. I don't know that we need a whole other 2-hour conversation on that, but happy to chat on where we take that conversation.
Well, that's good. Eric?
I think the other thing is, how much money do you have to spend and how fast do you want to grow? That's going to determine really what your strategy can be, because once you determine the profile of the franchisee you want, then you have to figure out how you're going to find them. Obviously organic, by word of mouth, and by the passionate CEO of their business can do a great job locally in their community. But this also goes back to geographic territory. If you try to market to the whole country, it's going to be very expensive. It's going to be very watered down. You're not going to have a lot of success. If you keep your growth to a couple of cities or a couple of counties or one state, you can do a lot more targeted marketing, and you can focus a lot more effort and energy on that small area. I'm not saying it'll be cheaper, but it may be more effective. You may be able to do a better job at really targeting who you're going after, because you probably live, work, and play in that area, and you know what you're looking for. So it's going to help you to refine your profile, refine your strategy, keep the cost down, and then hopefully you're going to find somebody who's close to where you live, work, and play. And it's going to be a great relationship to build your first franchisee with someone around you. So you can save money by not following the FDD in all 50 states. You can save, there's so many ways to save money to really focus on driving the first few candidates into the door to help you start your business growth, and not worrying about everyone else and all the LinkedIn profiles that you read about, so many stores and so many deals. Focus on your core business and what you offer. You'll get there. You just got to be patient and take the time, because it's worth it. If you do it wrong the first time, it's hard to do it right the second time.
That's good. JT, anything to add? Or?
I was just going to say, I think when you go into this, you got to look at your initial franchise fee is really your cost of acquiring these people, right? You can't be looking at that in most cases, a profit center. I think you should expect this day and age, if your franchise fee is $40,000, you should expect that $40,000 to go away in terms of commissions or consulting fees or advertising or whatever that might be. And so you need to be, what you talked about, your focus needs to be on getting the right people in that are going to build the business quickly and get the royalties coming in, which is really what you need to focus on. I think also there's an opportunity. When I first started franchising, we would take out ads in Entrepreneur Magazine with like one of those tear-out cards, and people would fill them in, and we'd sit there every day like Glengarry Glen Ross waiting for the leads to come in so we could call these people and be like, is that a 9 or a 3? I don't know. We'll call them all. Today, you have so many more opportunities to get out in front of people by using things that don't cost much money in terms of social media, and really putting efforts behind that to showcase your brand and really target people that you're looking for. And if you're not doing that, certainly that's a great place to start to really make an impression on people. So I would certainly be doing that.
Yeah, that's really good. I would say any brand who's looking to grow from a franchising perspective needs to have a franchise opportunity website. That's my perspective. That's the foundation for any growth strategy. Is you want to have a place that you can point interested candidates that can educate them not just on the brand to the consumer, but the value proposition we were just talking about. So That would be always the first place I would start. And coming to a lead generation budget is, as we were just talking about, if you're thinking about organically in-house drawing up your lead generation strategy, and Franchise Update Media publishes annually a report that's basically looking at what us as franchisors are spending in advertising for lead generation and ultimately deal flow. So for a non-broker lead last year was approximately $11,000 as a cost per deal. So what does that mean? If you approach this and say, I want to have 5 signings in my first 12 months, and you're going to do this organically, that's going to cost on average about $55,000 in lead generation dollars. That's non-commission dollars. That is solely the advertising going towards promoting your franchise. And for a broker channel, which is also very popular, on average, and I know I have broker groups in here that might say my fee isn't exactly that, but just as a rule of thumb, I think you could say that might be as high as, say, $25,000 as a cost per deal. But they might be producing the entire sales process as well. So that might be $125,000 for the same 5 signings. And so we want to share that with you just from an educational standpoint as you're thinking about what makes sense for you and how you need to be budgeting. The mistakes I've seen in my experience with emerging brands, and by the way, I've been in this seat before where we're going, hey, we want to go get 20 signings, but we have a budget of $40,000. So I'm trying to execute my strategy, and I'm behind the 8 ball from the start. And so my encouragement to you is be thoughtful about exactly the speed that you want to grow. Use the real numbers that our industry produces as a way to help you guide what your budget should look like. And you may need to make sure that you either adjust your signing count down or you adjust your budget count up.
Yeah, Josh, I would just add.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing. Over the years working for emerging brands, I've always challenged our team to have the strategy and the budget for your marketing for things that cost. And Josh, it was great that he shared kind of the AFDR, cost per deal, cost per lead. But I've always challenged the team to come up with the no cost and low cost opportunities as well. And one thing, as JT mentioned, and for social media, all of us have influencers in our brands, and those influencers are our franchise owners. And so even if you've sold your first and you have 1 to 5, all of those franchisees have stories to tell. So make sure for kind of the no cost, as JT mentioned, is putting those stories out there in social, right? That's no cost. So that should be part of your plan and your strategy. But kind of the low-hanging fruit and the kind of very low-cost things that they can be doing is the community marketing in terms of the franchise development story. And if you have customer marketing channels, make sure you have franchise development messaging in your customer marketing. Certainly as you're launching, that is one of the number 1 channels that you're going to get increase for franchise development. If you are building a wow brand in your local markets, they're going to inquire and be like, maybe that's for me. So definitely make sure that you have kind of that low-hanging fruit, the low cost and the no cost opportunities as part of your plan.
I would say you also can utilize your existing stores. If they're all owned by corporate or owned by you, you are marketing for your growth. And so you can, not in their face in terms of franchising or we're growing, but you can have conversations. The same customer keeps coming back in and he's a banker or his kids do this, and you start having conversations. That leads to conversations and that leads to leads. And that's really what it's about. So utilizing your own restaurant and having conversations and maybe putting up a little sign or maybe having, different things come in to talk to you about opportunities of growth. You got to utilize what you have and the assets you have to save as much money. You got to be very, very tactical and very smart about it.
Yeah, I was going to say all that actually, but no, I think I've seen a lot of people actually using QR codes on their vans or on their trucks or in their restaurants. It just says, ask us about franchising or franchising available. So it's not like right in their face, because the franchisees actually don't love that. But start with it from the beginning so you're not trying to put it in later. Is a lot easier than trying to jam it in later. I can tell you that from experience. Also, if you don't have a referral program for your franchisees, you are completely missing the boat. There's no better person that knows what a franchisee should look like than the franchisees themselves. And if you have some kind of incentive for them to send people to you and to talk to their friends about it, you'll end up growing your business very, very quickly, and with the right people. And they're the easiest deals in the world to do because they've already got validators that they're talking to on the side. We used to do HFC, about 40 a year, just purely on franchise referrals.
Yeah, it's one of our top lead sources today and remains that way. And that was JT's baby.
So you got some great nuggets right there. So if you have an operating company already, you're serving your customers, look for ways to introduce your franchise opportunity into the guest service experience. So you've seen them before on the bottoms of cups, bottles, signage, if you have a brick and mortar concept, and it could be on the bottom of an email, or it could be tagged in social media when you're putting out consumer marketing. And they're absolutely right. After you get some scale, if you're trying to introduce that, franchisees will typically push back on that unless you're connecting it with a referral program that they're incented to have that from a signage and a messaging standpoint in their guest service experience. I'm going to go way back in the room, and then we'll come right over here to Lori. So, yeah.
The referral program, what are the incentives? So I've done a lot of different things. Usually cash works really well. And it has to be enough to make it worth their while. Because if it's like, I'll give you $1,000 if you send me someone to buy, well, I'm not sure if I'm gonna put myself out there for $1,000 or if I'm gonna work that hard. If it's 15, yeah, that's interesting. I've also done trips. I've done combinations of cash and trips. We used to do a big incentive trip where we would bring everybody that did a referral in together and take them to like a Four Seasons in Costa Rica and just party for 4 days and no work involved. And they loved that more than the cash, quite frankly. If I came back to them and said, I'll give you 10,000 more but no trip, they would probably not send as many referrals in. So obviously as you're emerging, that's hard to be like, yeah, I'm gonna send everyone to Four Seasons in Costa Rica, but you can build it. Like we built it over a 10-year period.
Yeah, I would recommend asking your advisory council, or even as you get started, like, we want to implement this program. You know, what would incentivize you, or what would you like to see this program look like? Because as JT said, you know, what it incentivizes one person may not incentivize another. So you can kind of do it as a kind of vote, if you will. But I've seen it done all different ways for the franchise systems that I've been involved in, creating some type of president's club or what have you. I will say that bringing them together and still have some type of learning opportunity has been the most successful, but cash is always king.
Yeah, I would also just look for things that are going to be low impact to your P&L, like registration at your conference, a match back from a marketing fund, something that doesn't necessarily have cash is great. Don't get me wrong, but when you get to a certain threshold, need to make sure you're confirming with your attorney the proper way to disclose that, because you will trigger at some point somebody being a broker representative for you, even if they're your franchisee. So just be aware of that. That's great. So, and we can go offline with some other ideas on how to drive some value for your franchisees in incenting franchise development. Do you still have a question, Lori? Okay. And then we'll come over here, Gary.
I'll just tell you what I've done over the years. It's ranged from 25,000 with no trip to 15,000 with a trip, and that's what moves it for us in a lot of cases. So it's, you know, you can do it in royalty free credits as opposed to cash if that's the way you want to do it too, is another way to look at it. But I've found that less than 15,000, I wasn't getting much movement. 15,000 is enough to get people's attention. That's just what's worked for me.
I would only say in a little bit selfish way, you can also figure out how that money can help that franchisee grow. So instead of giving them cash, giving them something to help them build their second or third or fourth location. Because then you're getting them to grow more, and you've kind of won on both sides. It's a little bit self-serving, but it works really well.
And everybody in the room is going to be a lead source for JT now, so $25,000. Yeah, Gary, go ahead. Absolutely. So, yeah, absolutely. So this was more of a statement, but it was good. It was further. If you are going to do a referral program where you are giving cash to your franchisee or some sort of a dollar value to them, you need to make sure your attorney is reviewing that incentive and properly disclosing it. So we have our referral programs disclosed in all of our FDDs. It's a $5,000 referral, and we put that in the FDD. And so I'm sure JT's and Eric's and Marcy's, we're all disclosing our referral programs. You need to make sure you do that, to Gary's point, which is great. We have 20 seconds left. Does anybody have one last question for this great panel? Yes, sir. None of us pick bad locations up here. None of us. No. That's good. Maybe talk a little bit about your mistakes on territory selection or site selection. Go.
Yeah, I don't do stores, so I've never made a mistake on a site selection in my life. But I certainly have made some mistakes on franchisee selection and learned the hard way. And that's why if you get anything out of this, you have to be so diligent with those first ones, because everything else ladders down from there. But if you make a mistake and and someone's not working out and they're going to be a cancer in your system, you've got to go deal with it head on, early on, before it becomes just spread across the whole network and ruins your validation and everything else. So having a conversation with that person about how can we turn this thing around, what's happened, I think that's really important, to just own it and get in there and be the CEO and have that discussion, and then figure out, how do we move by this? If we can't move past it, then let's figure out how we put someone else in your store or your territory, you'll sell your business. Just letting those cancers sort of hang on is going to completely stall your growth if that happens. So hopefully it doesn't happen, but you got to stay away from it.
Great. Eric?
I would just add, as much as work as you put into finding the right franchisee, as much work needs to go into finding the right real estate, right? If it's the right location and the wrong franchisee, you can fix that. If it's the wrong franchisee in the wrong location, you're in big trouble, right? So they both have to win, and I'd rather win on the real estate than the franchisee if you're signing a 10-year deal, because you can fix that most likely. So I think it's very important you work hard to find a good broker program, a good real estate company, and really know what your brand needs to do to be successful. Co-tenants, egresses, parking, daytime hours, all the things that they're involved in finding the right real estate. It's crucial, because that's the 10-year commitment. Right, and if they're not successful, it's going to hinder you for a long time.
Yeah, this is so we have 4 brick and mortar brands. This is the most competitive commercial real estate market we've seen in the last 20 years. 4% vacancy rates right now. So it's imperative to pick good locations. When I've been overly aggressive in site selection or area selection, it's been typically because the area is too green. And so all I mean by that is, if you're betting on the come, on population growth, you have to have a more patient franchisee sometimes. So I would encourage emerging franchisees, to Eric's point just a moment ago, is make sure you're dialed in on your site criteria, just like you'd be dialed in on your franchisee criteria, and try to be as disciplined as you can. And it's difficult when you know you have somebody who wants to go into a more rural area and turning it into a regional center versus a core suburban or urban center. That can be challenging. Not impossible, but you have to be thinking more long-term with that type of a business. Brad's about to kick us off the stage here, guys. But hey, thank you so much for your attention and your engagement. Let's give this panel a round of applause, please. They're all going to be signing their